going to do here, I'm just going to try to ask all the questions that everybody here is thinking about, and Roger and I actually started.
I think you'll be okay. It's a slow news day, Gary.
Yeah, I know. We actually started this conversation in 1982 when I was working in Dallas, and Roger had his first job as an intern in the PR department at the NFL, and Roger was my go-to guy. It was way before the days of the internet, and if I was doing a story about one of the Cowboy Steelers Super Bowls, I used to say, hey, Raj, can you look this up for me? Our roles have changed a little bit over the years, but
he still calls me for this thing.
But we've stayed good friends for 40 years, and I'm really appreciative of that. So with that all being said, obviously the question on everybody's mind is what happened with Myles Garrett last night. The NFL came out really quickly and suspended him for the rest of the season, and then indefinitely, depending on your review of the situation. Just your thoughts when you saw that. I don't know if you saw it live, if you just saw it on tape, and what was going through your mind?
Well, anything that is outside the game is problematic to us. And that is, there's just no place for that in the game. It's completely outside of football. It's not an incorrect tackling technique or anything else. That's just completely outside the game of football. And so, in one way that, elevates it, and it's a different circumstance. It's disappointing when it happens. But we just get right to work and just sort of, okay, let's look at the tape. Let's go back and go through it. It's just not Myles Garrett here. Now, obviously, he was the starter, but we suspended 3 different players in that. It's probably, I would say, the most significant discipline we've had from any single incident in our history, although we don't keep that stat, but I'd be surprised if it wasn't. There'll be lots of players that entered the field that will also be fined over the next couple of hours. So it was, in my view, and I think our football people, something that had to be dealt with very quickly and very firmly to make it clear to players that is not acceptable. And I'd add one other thing, and to the clubs, because we also fined the clubs, both clubs, for having been the clubs that participated in this. Not that they were necessarily responsible for it, but they're accountable for it. And that's the message we want them to understand.
Just one follow-up question on that. When you suspend Garrett indefinitely, does that basically mean after the season you'll review the situation to decide any future punishment and fines?
Yeah, he will not play the rest of the season. He will probably meet with us sometime in the off-season, and I think we'll make a judgment on, does he have remorse? Does he understand why it's not acceptable? Do we understand what he's going to do to make sure it doesn't happen again? I think those are the things that are going to be very important for us. Because my experience with discipline with players and other personnel is if they get it, if they understand that they made a mistake and they accept that and then say, I'm committed to changing, you're usually on a good path. The ones that you don't are the ones that sort of say, there was nothing wrong with what I did. Now, I don't know whether he feels that way or he doesn't, but we'll find out.
If I just may say one thing here, and I should have said this as a ground rule, and not that anybody would do it anyhow, but just so Roger can be as comfortable as possible, no tweeting here. We're staying here today for now. We'll stay here, and I appreciate everybody kind of following those guidelines.
I appreciate you saying that, but I don't believe it in today's world anyhow, so it's okay. That's okay.
We'll have everybody sign a confidentiality agreement on the way out, although it might be too late.
By the way, you did mention that after the first question.
I know.
So it's already
That was the first one.
Yeah, sure, Gary.
Well, I got my assistants over there, so maybe they already tweeted that. I don't know. Roger, this being the 100th year anniversary of the NFL, and obviously we're reminded of that constantly with all the commercials and stuff. How is the season?
That sounds sort of critical, doesn't it?
No.
We're celebrating, Gary.
Okay, it's
not
a wonderful celebration.
That's better.
I'm actually very honored that the Hall of Fame picked me to be on the Blue Ribbon Committee to pick the Centennial class, and it's been very interesting conversations. But how's the season going so far? That's what I was going to ask you.
We're thrilled. I think it's one of the best seasons we've ever had, which is obviously appropriate for the 100th. But to me, it's got an interesting balance for the 100th, where you've got, these great players that have been around for, in some cases, several decades, that are still playing at the highest levels. The Tom Brady's of the world and the Drew Brees, and you see these guys still continuing to perform, and then you see the next generation of players coming. I think we have 9 quarterbacks this year that have quarterback ratings over 100, which has never happened before in the league, I don't believe. If so, it might have happened once. But 3 of them are under the age of 25. So when you talk about, so what gets me excited when at 100th, you sort of look backwards, but really we're spending more time looking forward. We're looking to sort of see where is the league going. And when you see that kind of talent and the amazing talent that they're changing the game. And I think they're changing their positions in several cases, certainly with quarterbacks, but even running backs, are starting to have a comeback here. And so it's a fun time to be a part of the league, but I would say it's the best time in the world in our history to be a fan.
Now, without question, I'm not patronizing you here, but you were without question the star of that commercial, the 100th anniversary commercial with the players falling all over themselves over those tables.
Yeah.
Has it led to a second career?
No. No, it's always easy to play yourself. That's what they say. So if you look back at any of those things I've done, I've been myself. But that was really fun. We had a blast doing it. I think it hit the right tone. It was celebrating our history, but it was celebrating great moments and the great players. It exceeded any expectation we had, and I think it's got a little bit of an afterlife too, which is fun for us. And I had more calls from players after that commercial that they were pissed off they weren't in it, and that's somewhat unusual. Usually, we have to say, we're going to do this spot. Would you come? They had the best time. We all had it. I mean, it was just fun.
So I know it was done in different locations with. Not everybody was there at the same time, basically.
No, everybody was in the same place, not at the same time, though. We did it in L.A. The only ones that couldn't be there that had to do a separate shoot, I think, were Brady and Brees, just because of playoff. I think were the only 2.
And
maybe there might have been a third.
Brady did something with Baker Mayfield with the rings, too.
Yeah. But it's the magic of media and television now. They can do those things. You don't know the difference, but. For those of us, I was in the room with, I think we had maybe 10 guys in there. And we had a blast. We were just having a good time.
It looked like it was a fun time.
Yeah, it was fun.
Until last night, the biggest on-field issue has been the new replay pass interference that came as a result of the bad call in the New Orleans Rams NFC Championship game. It seems to me that for the most part, coaches have given up on challenging it because Al Riveron and his crew in the New York office don't seem inclined to reverse any calls. How do you think it's working?
I couldn't disagree with you more. Okay. So, first off, they have been, but the point of the rule was to reverse the obvious and clear mistake.
Right.
So I think coaches, as you know, when you start particularly in the preseason and even into the regular season, they're testing. Where are they going to overturn calls? This is designed for that obvious and clear mistake. It's not to perfect or re-officiate a play. It is simply to fix those obvious errors. And the coaches have learned that we're not going to do the close ones. If it's in doubt, we're leaving it on the field. And they knew that going into it. I had several conversations with coaches about that this is not going to be something we're going to try to re-officiate every play, and they get it.
So the fact that you have the TV announcers and then they have all these former officials in the booth with them saying that was definitely pass interference or that wasn't pass interference and there's no challenge. Does that make you a little more vulnerable to fans being upset that they see calls that maybe weren't correct, but the coaches now aren't even bothering to challenge it? Or like you said, is it only like for the game-changing calls?
I'll take this small room, but I could put up 10 plays and we would have 50% would go either way. This game is fast. The other thing I love about listening to these experts on television is that they don't make the call like that on single view of what they see on the field. They go back and they look at a replay in super slow-mo and high definition and then they sort of form an opinion. Our guys don't have that benefit. Our guys are out there making a snap decision, and I think they do an extraordinary job. Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. And so I'm proud of the job they do. Now, do they make mistakes? That's why we're bringing technology in to try to fix those mistakes, and why we expanded it after last year's championship game to sort of say, listen, we should be able to fix that. If God forbid we make an error like that again, we should be able to have the tools to do that in today's day and age. And as you know, going back with your history, we led replay in sports, and so we've constantly been at the forefront. It was never very popular when we started it. As you remember, the godfather of replay was Tex Schramm.
That's right.
So, and Tex pushed this as a technology to help us officiate the game better.
Tomorrow in Atlanta, I think about half the teams will be there for a workout by Colin Kaepernick. It's been 2.5 years since he's played in the league. Why now? Why tomorrow? And do you think some team will sign him?
I have no idea about the last, but he's going to get an opportunity that most people dream about. I've had several players call me and say, "Can I go? Can I try out?" The reality is, it's a great opportunity in front of a large number of clubs. We don't know how many will show up until tomorrow. They have the right, and even if they don't, they're going to get the tape of the entire workout. And you know the process of what they do. Pro personnel people who are available on Saturday, it's the best day of the week for them, are going to be there. It's in a first-class facility, the Atlanta Falcons training facility. We have it being filmed by the Falcons people. So it was going to be done, and it's going to be done by our National Football Scouting people who do the combine and all the tryouts. And we have 2 former head coaches who will be overseeing the drills. So it's going to be done at the highest possible level. And it'll be his opportunity, and then we'll see how it goes. And there'll be 32 different opinions, I'm sure, and 32 decisions that'll have to be made, and that's the way it should be. We just felt, his agent came out about a month ago and said, we haven't been able to get an opportunity to be seen. We felt this would be a good opportunity, give him the chance to see what he can do and see if he can play at this level.
You've been involved in some negotiations for the new collective bargaining agreement. The current one expires after next season. I get the issue that the fans would really be interested in is whether the regular season is going to expand to 17 or potentially 18 games, what that would mean for the preseason, which you have been on record saying that the quality of play isn't NFL standard.
You'd agree with me, wouldn't you?
Yes.
I think everyone here would.
There's no doubt. But what's your level of optimism that the Players Association will go along with an increase in the number of regular season games?
Well, we are having good discussions. I think the discussion is broader than that. We're in the 9th year of a 10-year CBA. So what we have to do is figure out, okay, how is a collective bargaining agreement going to be modified for the next 10 years? And to me, what you always start with is the quality of what you're doing, the product, the game. And so for me, I look at the whole season. And the preseason, the regular season, the postseason, what is it we need to think about that we might want to modify to help obviously produce better football, more competitive football, safer football, and do the right things for our fans ultimately. And I think the preseason I don't think we, at this stage, need 4 preseason games to get our teams ready. As you know, back in the 70s, we were 6 preseason games. It went down to 4, and then we added 2 regular season games. I think it was 78. I think the idea of being able to reduce our preseason 1 or 2 games, maybe not at the same time, we might want to evaluate that, see what the impact is, can still produce the quality of what we need to get our teams ready, our players, and evaluate our players, and get us ready for the season. And then the regular season, that might be an opportunity with all the changes we made to the game and safety to add another game, and maybe even somewhere down the road a second game. But we want to evaluate that as we do it. And then obviously the postseason. Our league has only 12 teams in the postseason. We've talked about adding 2 more, so we'd have 14. There's a lot of benefits to it, and so we want to look at that. So I think all those changes have to be thought together about what do we do to continue to make this game not just strong, but make it better and take us into the next 100 years.
Now, I know you've always valued my opinion, although you've very rarely ever listened.
I guess I'm going to have no choice right now.
17 games, an extra playoff game, and an extra bye gets you to President's Weekend, which Super Bowl weekend is a holiday anyhow, and a lot of people probably maybe not be in shape to go to work on Monday. Extending it to mid-February to a holiday weekend where people don't go to work on Monday, where there's very little sports inventory in the first couple weeks in February anyhow. To me, that would be the ideal thing. You give the extra week off to the teams during the season. You guys get the extra playoff game. Extra regular season game, an extra playoff game, reduce the preseason from 4 to 2, and take the season to mid-February. That would be something I would imagine would go over very well with the public.
I think there's some real positives and benefits to that. There are a couple things in there. If you're playing regular season games, particularly in cities where the team isn't competitive in that given season, and it's in cold weather, it's challenging. So you've got issues that you have to balance. I think the double bye prevents, it involves some compromises from a TV standpoint it weakens the schedule for any given week. And as you know, we did that in the early 90s,
right.
And it didn't work real well, and so we pulled back from it. We now have 2 more teams, so we've got some changes that we've made as a league that might help satisfy that a little bit. So it's something we're thinking about. It's something that we want to have the ability to at least get there if we feel it's the appropriate thing to do. I'm not sure it'll happen in one step. If I had to guess, we'd probably do it in steps and try to see what the impact is. First and foremost would be safety for me. I would want to know that if we did it, we could do it in a way that would actually improve the safety of the game. And I actually think there are ways we could do that.
Have you found the Players Association receptive to?
Well, I think the fact is we are talking about it. None of us have an agreement, so we'll continue to have those discussions at the table. But I think they know and they recognize all the things we've done to make this game safer in the last 12 years have had a really very positive impact. Our concussion rate was down 30% last year. It's at equal levels again this year, which is an excellent sign that players are understanding, 1, the techniques, 2, the equipment's having an impact. We feel very good about where we're going in that level, but there's still a lot more work to be done.
Let's turn to some questions about you. For those who don't know this.
Let's go back to the others.
For those who don't know this, Roger was one of the greatest bartenders at Washington and Jefferson in his years at school there. And he told his dad, and for those who don't know, and it was mentioned earlier, his dad actually became the New York Senator after Robert Kennedy was assassinated. And I know your father would be so proud of you today, but you did tell him at a young age that your goal was not only to work at the NFL, but to be the commissioner. Those were pretty lofty goals, and you dealt with anybody who's gone through this themselves or have kids who are getting out of college who are applying for jobs. You went through a lot of rejection from the NFL, but you were persistent in your letter writing campaign. And I know there was a story that you've told me that you're actually driving to New York and they said, how soon can you be here from college? And you say, I'll be here in 20 minutes or whatever.
Slightly off, but it's
okay.
I did write a letter to my dad, so I still have it actually. He gave it or left it after he passed on. It was in a file, and I have it. But I wrote it to him as I was graduating from college. Said there's 2 things I'd like to do, which is make you proud and become commissioner of the NFL. Now, I really wasn't that foolish to think I'd become commissioner of the NFL at whatever it was, 21. But it is, and I wouldn't say it was a goal. My goal was to work for the NFL, and it just it took a lot to get in. Gary's right. I have all 51 of these letters. 51 letters to the NFL, and I got rejected 51 times, including to some of the owners that are currently owners today. I pull those out at certain times and make sure they see that. And then, that last phase of the interview, somebody eventually, his name was Don Weiss, who was the executive director, said, if you're ever in the area, stop by.
Okay.
And we'll have an interview. And I said, well, I can be there tomorrow morning at 8. He said, great, 8 o'clock. So I just wasn't going to get, if he left me a little bit of room, I was going. I happened to be in Pittsburgh at the moment,
Okay.
though. And so I got in the car and I drove basically all night to get there, but it was worth it for me. And so I think he actually eventually offered me the internship because he felt sorry for me, or he said, this kid's not going to quit. So, but that's what you have to do. I think you have to really be persistent if it's what you want to do.
In 1983, you worked with the Jets.
Yep.
And obviously you had a tremendous positive influence on their future. What do you remember about that season? Was it fun working with a team? Because other than that, you've only been in the league office.
Yeah, it was a great experience for me. So I was an intern for the '82 season, which, by the way,
it was '82.
For the NFL.
Oh, okay.
So I'm coming, and then we went on strike actually the week after I started the NFL for 2.5 months. My internship was 4 months. So I said, well, this isn't going to work out so well, but they kept me on. And then the next summer, a guy named Ron Howard, who you remember as a PR, he moved on from the Jets to the Eagles as their PR director, and they needed an intern. And they said, would you do it? And I said, yeah. And so it was a great experience for me because I met a lot of people, including Gary and Paul Needell and so many other people on the media side, but also the players and the coaches and the administrators are still my friends. I talk to them all the time. Ken O'Brien is still a good friend. Freeman McNeil, Marty Lyons, I mean, go down through the list. And it was great for me to see what it's like to be at a club. And so I did that for the season. It was a rough season because, as you know, '82, they went to the AFC Championship game. '83 didn't turn out so well. But that also was a great experience. And it was also the year, I think it was their final year in Shea Stadium, as I recall. And they announced that my final game. And to go through that experience as a young intern was also great. I got to see a lot, and I got to learn a lot.
Both Pete Rozelle and Paul Tagliabue, two commissioners you worked for, were tremendous influences on you and mentors. What do you take from your experience working for them that, if you don't apply it on an everyday basis, at least it was a lesson learned in how you conduct business as commissioner?
Well, they each had a lot of things that I learned, and I was really fortunate to work for both of them. They're both brilliant in their own ways. Pete Rozelle is why I wanted to get involved. I just admired the way he did things. I studied everything he did. I read about everything he did. And I just thought he was extraordinary in the way he did it. He had a different way, so you may not know this, but in our league, we have to get 24 of 32 votes for anything significant. So if we get a labor deal, we have to get 24 owners to agree. Pete had a great way of outlining his vision and then using the clubs to sell the vision amongst themselves. He wasn't he didn't get up there and talk a lot at the front table. He didn't bang his fist down, but he worked very well to sort of make it their idea. And so ownership of an idea, he made it theirs. And I thought that was brilliant. And I saw the way he did that. And he did some things, getting them to share revenue equally. There's no way that could happen today. No way. And it won't happen in any other sport, in my view. But that is a Pete Rozelle vision, and he sold that with that technique.
How hard is it when you're sitting in a room of multi-billionaires and you have an idea, or an idea has come across that really needs to, where the owners really need to be convinced this is the right thing for the league, and they're used to getting their own way in their own businesses, but now you're kind of guiding them and maybe forcefully guiding them. How hard is it to get these billionaires to get on the same page?
You know, first, I don't start once we get in the room. I start well before. I usually come into the meeting room. I usually have a pretty good idea where people are. But you spend time with them, and you have to listen and acknowledge and respect their viewpoints. A lot of times they just need to be able to say it. You have to set a process up where they know we've been thoughtful about it, share the input, understand the data, make sure that they know there are good reasons for this. And then at the end of the day, they listen to their partners too. And you know, you have to have a process that allows that to happen. And then I believe our ownership has been one of our greatest assets. because they do what's right for the league ultimately, and they see this is the best thing for the league. It may not be the best thing for my franchise, but I believe this is the right thing to do. And I honestly cannot think of a vote in at least my tenure as commissioner that we didn't get, and I think it just takes patience and respect, frankly.
Is Jerry Jones as entertaining and convincing in the meeting rooms as he is when he deals with the media?
Yes. he may be more entertaining. No, he's very smart, and he is he's got a way of looking at things that I think are remarkable. We obviously don't agree, as you know, on everything, but that's okay. We respect one another, and it actually is a very positive working relationship because he makes you think about things a little differently, and that's helpful to us. And he's helped us make some changes in the league that I think are really extraordinary over the years, and I attribute that to Jerry.
In December of 17, you signed a 5-year contract extension. Takes you through, I think, the 2023 season. Do you see yourself working through the length of that contract? And is this still fun?
Oh yeah, no, I love it. I mean, even this morning, having been up late and watching that and knowing what we had to do this morning, I was up at it at 5 a.m. like I am every day, and I love it. The challenge is what I love, and being able to listen. How many people get to do something, one, they dreamed of, two, something that has such a tremendous impact on other people? I mean, most of the country was talking about last night's game for the wrong reasons, but they were. And we had a chance to influence, what people were talking about and try to do something that was appropriate here to make sure they understood what we stood for. And that kind of thing drives me. I like that opportunity. And, I know not everybody's going to agree that we did the right thing. I'm sure there's people in Cleveland or Pittsburgh. But I hope at the end of the day people realize that we're trying to be fair and we're trying to do the right thing ultimately.
So you're managing 32 owners and nearly 1,700 players. And the league has had its issues over the years with players and different things that have come up. Has there ever been a point when you say, you know what, I don't need this aggravation. I'm going to think about doing something else?
No, because I don't really think of it as aggravation. I actually, again, I think of it as doing something that you are passionate about and that you absolutely love and that has an impact on a lot of people. And we all want to find our place in the world to sort of say, how can we have an impact? And I've been fortunate enough to be able to find that. So, yeah, do you get aggravated from time to time? I'm sure, all of us have times where, you sort of, wow, that was a day. But it's something that really drives me and I love. Will I do it the rest of my life? No.
At
least I hope not. That means they'll be carrying me out. So.
Let's just hit on a couple more topics. The future of the NFL having a team full-time in London. While you're commissioner, do you think?
I don't know, Gary, because I don't know the answer to how long I'll be commissioner, but I will say this. I think what we have, so I'm going to Mexico City on Sunday for our game there. The reaction's been extraordinary. They just love football. In the UK, we played 4 games there this year. It is the way the game has grown and the understanding of our fans and the media has been really fulfilling for us. And I think they clearly have the passion for the game. I think they clearly have the corporate support, the media support would be necessary for our team to be successful there. So I am completely convinced on those points. Where I have a little hesitancy and not sure how we solve it, said I'm not sure we can do it in a competitive way. Mm-hmm. Not just for the team that would be in London, but also for the teams that have to play London. And most specifically the postseason. So, we can schedule the regular season and we have, a fair number of tools and flexibility to be able to do that, and playing once a week helps.
Right.
But where you can't control that is in the postseason. And so, you could have a franchise in London and either the Seahawks have to go to London on a short week and then come back and play somewhere else. you can have some real complications with that. So we have to think through some of those issues and try to see if we can do it, because we wouldn't do it if we couldn't do it where it was going to lead to competitive balance across 32.
Do you think players would object to being drafted
Well,
or assigned
you know,
to a
it's
London
funny.
team?
So London this year, we had our 31st of the 32 teams play in London this year. So who wants to guess who the 32nd team is? Real quick. You got 5 seconds. Somebody said Packers. So Packers got it. And it's not because they don't want to. But, you know, when we first introduced, I think it was the first year I was commissioner, that we were going to play regular season games, the reaction wasn't real strong. It was, so we had to walk through it, and we've had to convince every team, and every team that goes over there is convinced that it's a great market. They had a great trip. The football people have come home satisfied that they can do it competitively. And the players have been, we had in our last game over there, I had several players that came out and said publicly, sure, I'd love to be here in London. I think it would be a great experience for a young man. But do I think that every player that is going to play in the league over the next 10 years would like to play there? No, but they probably say that about some of our U.S. cities too.
I have to admit, covering the league for over 40 years, I never thought I'd see the day there was a team in Las Vegas.
I probably wouldn't have thought that 10 years ago either. Yeah.
What are your thoughts about it? And obviously, if we were going to pick one existing team that would wind up in Las Vegas, it would be the Raiders. I mean, does anybody have any doubts about that? What are your concerns about that? Are you excited about it? How do you think it's going to work out?
You know, I am not concerned about it. I think it's going to be incredibly successful. I mean, the reaction we're getting is overwhelming. And so I think that stadium's going to be great. I think the market's going to be great. I think Las Vegas as a city has changed dramatically over the last, 10, 15, 20 years, and certainly even beyond that. But just in the last few years, it's become not just a gambling or casino city. That's an entertainment city. Mm-hmm. I mean, they have great entertainment, great hospitality, and people love to go to Vegas. And I think it'll be the most popular place for visiting fans to go to. And so I'm convinced it's going to be incredibly popular, and we don't really see any downside at this point. We're really very confident. And in fact, we're bringing the draft there next spring. So,
the NFL is really set up to but make it very difficult to have a 20-year run like the Patriots are still in the midst of here.
Yep.
I can't say do you ever think we'll see that again, because who knows, but have they really defied parity over the last 20 years? What would you attribute that to?
Well, there's someone named Tom Brady and Bill Belichick that probably have a lot to do with that. I mean, but Robert Kraft and his organization, they've been really smart about the way they manage the team. They're not afraid to make changes quickly, but as you know, when you have a great coach and a great quarterback, those are two fundamental building blocks for any team. And they have defied, I think, a lot about what we see in the competitive landscape of the NFL. Particularly today, in today's environment where you have free agency, we have a draft that actually it disincentivizes you to win, because we move you down the list every time you win. So there's a lot about the league that it's harder to win today than ever. And I think the Patriots organization, the players, coaches, they all deserve a lot of credit for what they've been able to achieve.
Now, I did a little poll of all our guests here before you got here. Yeah. What's the one thing they wanted me to ask Roger? And it was unanimous, believe it or not. Have you ever broken a rib at the draft and one of those 300-pound linemen hug you?
Pretty close. Matter of fact, last year I actually feared for my life for about 3 seconds because I didn't see it coming. But I would say this about it. It is actually one of my, probably the favorite experience that I have is the draft. Just because these guys, they're acting so cool when they come into the NFL. I meet with them before that day, and we're, hey, I'm going to be cool. I'm going to be calm. And then when you get to that moment and you've realized your dream, you know where you're going, which NFL team, and you've been drafted in the NFL, and you come out on that stage and there's whatever it is, hundreds of thousands of people out there, it's an emotional moment. And they let it rip, and that's okay. That's what we want them to do. And to be a part of that, for me, it's worth the sore ribs and the fear of getting killed by some of these guys, but it's actually one of the favorite moments I've had in the NFL.
Two last things. Of all the games you've attended over the years as commissioner and your pre-commissioner days, is there one moment, this might be just really hard on the spot, is there one moment that really just stands out to you? You just think, I just watched an incredible moment in sports history?
Well, the one that comes to mind, I wasn't commissioner, but I've worked in the league so long, as you pointed out. It was actually the Bills-Giants Super Bowl in the early 90s. The Gulf War had just started, 2 red, white, and blue teams. Literally, there were, snipers on the roof. It was, high security. It was in the evening in a beautiful open stadium. It's Tampa's old stadium. Mm-hmm. And I was on the sidelines with my mentor, Pete Rozelle, who was flipping the coin. And my job was to get Pete there and back again. Tough job, but I had to do it. And so I was standing on the sidelines with Pete, and I have this picture in my office, and Whitney Houston is from here to that gentleman over there, singing that national anthem, and it was the most, it just blew me away. Mm-hmm. And what was so great about it, I think, is that was the moment that I really realized how much we influence the psyche of the United States and, frankly, the world in many ways, and the impact that we can have. And so I always remember that as a moment that I will never forget, standing there with my hero, with Whitney Houston, and this incredible scene. And it was something I will never forget. Yeah, so I'd have to put that up there.
That was pretty amazing. Last question, Roger. What are your thoughts on fantasy and how it has changed fan engagement for the NFL?
It's been nothing but a positive. It's allowed people to engage with our game in different ways. They watch longer than they did because of fantasy. They might watch, more in different ways, different games, different platforms, different opportunities. I think it's engaged people. My daughters, I have twin girls who are 18. They came home a few years ago, and it probably doesn't surprise you, they're football fans, but they said, Dad, we're starting a fantasy football league. And I said, great. So it was all their friends. It was 12 girls participating in this fantasy league, and they had a blast. And
were they commissioner?
One of them was, actually, yeah. And by the way, they did not give her as much crap as they give me, but that's okay. But they loved it. And to me, that's what we're trying to do, is just give people different ways to interact. That's why when you look at daily fantasy and you look at legalized sports betting, it's going to give people a different way to interact with our game and to get closer to our game and to get closer to our players. And that's a positive for me. And we're here for our fans. That's why we do this. And so if we can find ways to engage them and to grow the number of fans, that's a good thing for our game, ultimately.
Okay, well, thank you so much for being here.
Glad to do it.
Thanks everybody for coming, and let's hear it for Roger.
Thank you. Yep, thank
you. This was supposed to be a quiet Friday in November, but
yeah, Gary's always got good timing, doesn't he?
But you know how that goes. So we really do appreciate him coming by on a day where big decisions had to be made, and maybe sometime before you give up this job, we'll do it again.
You better hurry. Just kidding.